Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in. This is Full Catalog, where I review albums and, most importantly, I rank the entire discographies of some of my favorite artists and artists you recommend. Now, this is a special episode for me because Chevelle is my favorite band. They have a very special place in my heart. The band that got me into rock music and into playing the guitar, and I can genuinely say that getting into this band changed my life in many meaningful ways. So this one is a bit personal to me. And before I get into the rankings, I would just like to say I've tried ordering things into high level tiers before ranking them numerically because it helps make things a little clearer to me by breaking them into categories first, as opposed to just looking at all 117 tracks I ranked here and sorting them. A couple notes here. I did not include cover songs performed by Chevelle. So tracks like Delivery, for example, are not in this ranking. These are Chevelle original songs, of which I ranked 117. That does include interludes. That being said, without wasting any more time, I'm going to get into the D tier. And I'll just preface with these are the songs that I kind of skip or just don't really care for, but everything in C and above, I love by Chevelle. So this was a very difficult ranking to do. Anyways, 117, I don't think this will be controversial, is Wormhole, or Vermhole, if you will. This song doesn't need to exist and should have just been an additional few seconds at the end of Pistol Star. In a similar vein, 116 is Sleep the Deep, another instrumental interlude that doesn't really need to exist. I wouldn't mind if this was just cut entirely from Naratia's. It really feels like padding rather than experimentation, and if they wanted to play with some of these new sounds, why not try and flesh it out into its own full track? 115 is Open. This is a decent instrumental opener to point number one, but in comparison to the rest of their discography, some tracks have to be placed at the bottom here, and Open is one of those. 114 is Interlude. Not a whole lot to say about this one, down at the bottom with the rest of the interlude tracks. At least this one tells you what you're going to get. Breaking the interlude formula at 113, we have The Damned. I am really sorry if there are big fans of this track out there, but this is one of the only straight-up skips in Chevelle's catalog for me. And don't worry, I give La Gargola a ton of love later on and really enjoy the album, but I've always just actively disliked this song, especially the hey part during the bridge. The track is a bit repetitive, and the How Wrong Was I has always sounded a bit off-pitch to me. 112, Lost in Digital Woods. It is an interesting and bold swing for Pete to close out the album on a kind of spoken word poem over some ambient instrumentation. Overall, this swing happened to be a miss for me. It's interesting for a first listen, but I just never revisit this track because there isn't much here to come back to, in my opinion. The poem itself isn't quite thought-provoking enough to justify the format, and I'm also not the biggest fan of Test Enough, which we'll get to in a second, so the callback to that song at the end of the album here didn't do a whole lot for me. Let me know if I'm just dense and maybe missing out on something, but I could live without this track, especially as the closer to such an epic album. 111 is Test Enough. Another track that feels a bit half-baked. I like the delay effect that is used on the guitar, but in general, this is one of many tracks on Naratia's that I think could have been cut, and left it as a tighter album and better listening experience overall. These tracks really hurt the pacing of the album in my opinion, and it isn't compelling enough to be used as a callback again in Lost in Digital Woods, like I mentioned. 110 is The Gist, another instrumental jam track. This one does its job very well. It just kicks the door down, giving about 2 minutes of super heavy instrumentation and an ending without overstaying its welcome. Again, Pete's vocals are such a key component of Chevelle's sound, so I just can't give this track any higher of a position than where it's at. 109 is SMA, or SMA, I don't know, I've never really said this one out loud. I really like the main riff in the verses, especially the slides. This is not Pete's best track vocally. I don't find any sections that are an earworm or have me singing along really. not a song that I revisit intentionally. Also from point number 1, we have number 108, Anticipation. The opening is very chaotic with the slides going on. I like that the bass continues that pattern under the verses when the guitar pulls back a bit, but overall this song just doesn't really draw me in and I don't revisit it often. 107 is Skeptic. You can very clearly hear the Tool influence in this track through the intro and the way it goes into the first verse. It's honestly a bit too derivative of Tool's sound, so I kind of dock the song a bit for that. 106 is Pier. Chevelle has done these atmospheric, gentler outro songs. It kind of becomes a staple in their catalog. And this is a decent enough one to start that formula. The bass comes through a bit too strong in the mix compared to everything else. Too many things sound like they're competing for the spotlight in the mix. And funny enough, the vocals are a bit too quiet on the verses in relation to the bass and everything else. I like the mid-song switch up, but it isn't really the smoothest transition. The overdrive guitars coming in also just feel a bit abrupt in this track. 105 is Mia. The guitar is so interesting on this song and unique for Chevelle's catalog, but it's one of the least Chevelle-sounding Chevelle songs, if that makes any sense. It's another weaker track on point number 1 and in their discography in general. Now we're moving into the C tier. Everything above this point are songs that I, for the most part, really enjoy, and I'm not skipping majority of these songs. Starting off at 104 is Verrucht. Definitely the strongest instrumental track by Chevelle, though the competition isn't that stiff, to be honest. I'll take this over a few tracks in their discography that even have vocals, but in general, even though it rocks as a jam track, it simply can't compete with some majority of the tracks where Pete's vocals are the standout. 103 is Shot from a Cannon. I don't love this track. I find it to be overlong, but it really feels like there's no justification for that length. I was really excited when I saw that there would be an 8-minute album closer for the North Corridor, but then half the runtime ended up just being kind of drawn out riffage, and everything that precedes it isn't that interesting or unique either. And the song just kind of fizzles out. 102 is Until You're Reformed. I like the pinch harmonics that open the song up. The verses chug along in a satisfying way, and the final verse with just the bass and the toms is a nice change up. It's a pretty good track, though it kind of lacks a solid hook or chorus. 101 is Dose. My question on this track is, does it need to be 6.5 minutes long? Look, I'm not part of the TikTok generation. One of my favorite bands on earth is Porcupine Tree, who has like 11-minute long songs, but I need something to keep me invested a little bit more for the runtime than Dose provides. It is good enough track that I've got it placed above some others I just mentioned, but I do think it would benefit from being edited down a bit. Number 100 is Long. Insanely hype intro to this song. Pete sounds really solid belting out the first few notes. I like the instant dynamic shift into the more gentle, clean chords and softer vocals here. 99 is Prove to You. This isn't as interesting of a track vocally from Pete, but the guitar is what really shines here. I especially like the pinch harmonics he hits every now and then. The No Place Like Home section is vocally my favorite part of the track. Overall, it's a bit repetitive of the song, but it is strong. 98 is Blood Out in the Fields from the most recent album, Bright as Blasphemy. I respect this song for having such a unique sound compared to the rest of their catalog. That being said, it still remains the weakest track on the album for me. I think having 2 slower, atmospheric tracks on a 9-song album was an interesting choice. Hallucinations happens to be the stronger of those 2, in my opinion. 97 is Leto's Headache. This song is pretty great for ultimately being a B-side, though I understand why it was not included as a main album track. I believe this was the bonus track for Sci-Fi Crimes, but correct me if I'm wrong. And it just doesn't surpass any of those main album tracks in quality. It doesn't really draw me back like so many of Chevelle's other songs, but I do enjoy this song when it comes on and I'm listening to it. 96 is Indifference. I am a sucker for Chevelle acoustic tracks, though I think this is one of the less standout ones. A weaker Chevelle track is still a great song, but because I have to rank everything here, Indifference won't be outranking some of my preferred acoustic tracks. I really love the vocal harmonies on this song. 95 is A Miracle. This is one of the B-sides that really stands out as having a case for being a main album track. It's a really great song that blends a lot of different sounds and ideas. My only complaint about the track is that it feels like it could have been trimmed down a bit on runtime. I actually like the verses more than the chorus in this song, though the chorus has strong lyricism, and it's some of the more realized storytelling in Chevelle's catalog. 94 is Sleepwalking Elite. This track has a very strong chorus as far as B-sides go. I think it's a strong track lyrically, though it's prevented from being a bit higher on the list because it doesn't do anything stand out to me. It's just pretty great run-of-the-mill Chevelle. On a similar vein is number 93, Fizzgig. Pretty fun, nonsense lyrics to this song. It's a bit derivative of the sound of most of Sci-Fi Crimes to me, and that's my favorite album, so I don't really mind it. It just makes sense that this is a B-side. It's just not as strong as some other album tracks, but I think it's a little more tight in its runtime and better utilized than the last couple B-sides I mentioned. 92 is Enemies. It's a very meh song. I think The North Corridor gets off to a rough start compared to other Chevelle albums. Even though it's a faster tempo and heavier track, it feels a bit lifeless and repetitive at points to me. So sorry if this track is a favorite of yours, but I don't know. Like, when this song comes on, I start jamming out to it. It's just, I don't go seek it out often. So I end up feeling a bit mixed on it, which is why it's here at 92. 91 is Grab Thy Hand. This is my personal least favorite track on Wonder What's Next. It doesn't do anything very distinct that isn't done better by previous songs on the album. Family System and Wonder What's Next nail the heaviness a bit better than this track, and the verses are decent, but the chorus just isn't that good to me. 90 is Warhol's Showbiz. One of the coolest song titles on The North Corridor, but unfortunately the music doesn't live up to the title in comparison to some of the other tracks on the album. It does the whole riff with scream-based vocal hook pattern used across the album, but just not as good as the 3 songs that precede it at that formula. I do love the bass work in this track in particular. 89 is Door to Door Cannibals. This is another song that has just never grabbed me quite as much as the rest of the tracks on the album it's on. It is a bit weak for an opener, and at times when I'm listening to this track, I can find it to be a bit boring, but then it wins me back by the end, and it's just so heavy that even if it sounds like I'm being a bit pessimistic on this track, I do have to put it up at 89 here. 88 is Clones, which I mentioned Door to Door Cannibals is one of the weaker opening tracks in their catalog. I think Clones is a weak closing track compared to the rest of their catalog. It doesn't do a whole lot interesting or unique in its sound or songwriting, and it's kind of ironic that a song with the lyrics "You're just a clone of them, have you no way to set a fire" is one of the more generic sounding songs in their catalog. But it does have its merits. 87 is Hats Off to the Bull. Very bass-driven song, which is the case for a lot of this album. Headbanger chorus to this track. To me, this song doesn't grip me as much until the bridge at around 2:10. And from there, I really love the guitar work and the way it transitions into the final minute. 86 is Humanoid. Humanoid is a track that I don't really have strong thoughts about, positive or negative. It's pretty middle ground for me. I'll listen to it when it comes on and really enjoy it, but I'm not usually like clicking on this one in particular when I want to listen to a track from this album. It's fine. 85 is Still Running. To this day, I have no idea what Pete is yelling at the beginning of this track, but that's okay. The palm-muted tremolo guitar throughout the verses has a lot of power to it, and then they layer in the upper octave to give it a bit more depth. The say it sections are one of the less compelling main hooks on this type of thinking, but it's still a really solid track on a really solid album. 84 is The Fad. This is a good track. I really like the lyrics here. I actually like the lyrics on this track more than I like the music, but they're both good. The lyrics are just exceptional. Um, Particularly the line, once the fad permeates, it's hip to care, hip to hate it, I think is one of Pete's better lyrics in their catalog. 83, Fell Into Your Shoes. This song has always felt like it somewhat interrupts the best run of consecutive songs in their discography. If you start at Sleep Apnea and go to Highlands Apparition, it's a bit repetitive. I feel like it could have been edited down a bit, but the tremolo guitar over the choruses is a really nice touch, adding some layers. I like the rare guitar solo here. Pete doesn't add them often, but when he does, they always feel like they're intended to fit the vibe of the song, rather than to show off his technical skill. I like when solos feel more like a necessary part of the track rather than just purely an embellishment to show off skill. 82 is Face to the Floor. This might be one of the opinions on this list that gets me crucified for being this low, but look, it's a song that is just very standard in its structure. It's very repetitive. Obviously, that lead riff is incredible, which is part of the reason this song got a ton of radio play back when it released. But yeah, it's just everything I have above it on the list just does more with equal or with less. It's just, I don't know. Face to the Floor gets repetitive. I have to take it in small doses. But when I'm into this song, I'm really into this song. The same is true for 81, which is Take Out the Gunman. My notes say, I have a fever, and the only prescription is more cowbell. If you know, you know. This is a good track, a good lead single, but on an album where so many songs feel unlike anything else in their catalog, Take Out the Gunman ends up feeling a bit plain by comparison. That said, as I've mentioned earlier in the list, Playing for Chevelle is still really damn good. I've just got a run of lead singles here. 80 is Rabbit Hole or Cowards Part 1. I was a little bit underwhelmed when this was released as the first single of Bright as Blasphemy. I can't really explain it, but it just never hooked me in a way where I felt the need to just keep playing it. And typically I wear singles out to death ahead of album releases, but the song was always just fine to me when it released. But it's grown on me so much in the context of the album it's in, especially with Cowards Part 2, which we'll talk about later. My favorite part of this track is Pete's delivery of Down Inside the Longest Rabbit Hole. I like what he does with his voice there. 79 is Ruse. This was an early standout to me when Hats Off to the Bull first released, though it's fallen a bit in my rankings over the years. I like the bass here and find that that's the standout element of the track. I like the way the guitar and Pete trade pitch on the chorus. The chords kind of slide upwards as his vocal line is moving downwards for a bit. The song overstays its welcome ever so slightly. 78 is Blank Earth. This song has just a banger chorus. I like the clean guitar transition sections. The one that builds and then adds in the bass around 220 in the track is a nice way to break up the formula a bit. The song does a lot to stay fresh despite its longer runtime as far as Chevelle songs go. Another example of things I like in that is when the guitar drops out around 312 for a bit and then comes back into a clean guitar pre-chorus. The outro of this song is also quite solid. 77 is Emotional Drought. It's a very strong track lyrically. One of my complaints about this type of thinking is that the songs can start to blend together a bit when I listen to the whole album. I think it's a very cohesive album, but almost to a fault, where some of the songwriting becomes a bit repetitive on front-to-back spins of this album. And so I usually get a bit fatigued by the time I get to Emotional Drought, which isn't really the track's fault. I think it's just, it follows a similar vibe to everything before it, but doesn't improve upon them. So it just ends up being towards the bottom of that album for me in rankings. 76 is Another Know-It-All. This track is just so heavy and angry. The line, I'll take anything that's not bolted down, is a great one. This is just a solid headbanger track. 75, Don't Fake This. My favorite part of this track is the second verses, Look and Connect, We're Refusing to Rust, and the way the vocals harmonize on that part. Pete's screams on Don't Fake This are raw, and they really juxtapose the clean vocals preceding it. Okay, here's another hot take at 74. Please don't hate me. It's the red. I know I might upset some people with this one. Look, the song has a very powerful chorus. Um, it deserves all the radio play it got back in the 2000s. I love so much of this album and this song. I play this song often, but just compared to some of the work they've done in subsequent albums and years, it just hasn't stood the test of time quite as much in their catalog for me. Part of this could be just because I've overplayed it to death, but we'll see with another track off the same album later on the list, that might be proven untrue. 73, In Debt to the Earth. I like the build-up on Gratitude and Fortitude and the way it explodes into the overdrive section, just completely juxtaposed to everything that came before it. Pete's voice sounds a bit over-processed on the belting, in a way that has always stood out to me. So, I don't know. With how much I'm going to rave about his raw kind of vocal fry techniques later on, especially for sci-fi crimes, I felt this processing was kind of the antithesis to that, and I don't love it. At this point, I should mention, we are in the B tier. We have been since 74. So everything in this stage these are really, really good Chevelle songs to me. But 72 is Peach. One of Chevelle's more scathing tracks politically. I love the way the lyrics are initially pretty horrific, and with the sci-fi theme of the album, sounds like you're being torn apart and devoured by aliens, only to realize it's your fellow kin. A genuinely disturbing song, and to me, the thesis of the album as a whole. How can the timeline we were in when this album released be real? Like, how can this absurdity be anything other than a simulation? My favorite part of the track is the No Conscience section. 71 is Breech Birth. Be brave, reshape, can't force all into molds is an earworm melody to start the song. I love this song lyrically, especially passing out schematics, forcing all into molds. My biggest gripe with Breech Birth is that it has always stood out as one of the most repetitive Chevelle tracks to me, but because that repetition is so good, I don't dock it too much for that. 70 is Wonder What's Next. This is a very heavy track. I like the rage directed towards the suits in the music industry, kind of ruining the fun and creativity of the process. You could argue that it could be a bit more subtle, but the song has nothing subtle about it musically, so it's fitting that the lyrics are more directly confrontational as well. The blaming game section is the highlight. 69 is Closure. This song suffers a bit in its pacing, but I do love the clean guitar in the start. Pete's falsetto is so well utilized here. The vocal harmonies on Closure Has Come to Me Myself are well written, and I can never choose which one of those lines to sing along to. 68 is Get Some. Really powerful verses. The blackout section is extremely catchy here. I think what makes this song shine the most, and I think most people would agree, is the switch up halfway through into the Get Some section. And then the build to the ending is just a standout from there. 67 is Vitamin R, Leading Us Along. I like the backup vocals during the pre-choruses in this song. The chorus itself is a very, very memorable one. The guitar chords during the verses are satisfying in their higher register and palm muting, while the bass kind of chugs along underneath it, keeping the pulse. The drums during the He's Alone part adds a thickness to the song right before going into that soaring chorus. 66 is Straitjacket Fashion. The guitar riff during the verse on this song is really underrated, in my opinion. I don't see it discussed often, but it is a great one. This is another fun, fast-paced track that delivers catchy vocals and instrumental heaviness in a good balance. 65 is Brainiac. This is pretty brutal for their uncle that this song was written about. Calling one of your relatives one cell, even if it's an affectionate way, is horrible and hilarious at the same time. This is a fun and fast-paced track, again, keeping up the momentum off of Anti-Saint. 64 is A New Momentum. The intro of this song is very chaotic, and I love it. The kick drum, kind of four on the floor, driving the verses like in Sleep Apnea, gives you something to bop your head to. And then it just builds from there with Sam laying down a really solid groove alongside Pete's riff. Pete's vocal fry on the pre-chorus is great. This is a song where the track is actually, the chorus of the track is the part I like the least compared to just such a great verse and pre-chorus. Not to say I don't like the chorus, but it does feel a little backwards in that way, which is interesting. 63 is This Circus. This song was a grower for me. I think with just how mind-blowing everything that comes before it is on Sci-Fi Crimes, it kind of had an impossible task to close out such a peak album. That said, This Circus has its own strengths that shouldn't be overlooked. It has one of the more distinct and unique sounds on the album, and it does have a strong chorus and some great drum work from Sam throughout. I will mention Pete's vocal fry on just about every track from Sci-Fi Crimes, but it is truly great on Grab and Hold in this song. 62 is Hunter Eats Hunter. Pete described this track as having a chance encounter with a gargoyle while taking out the trash. It perfectly captures that vibe, even beyond its lyrics. I love how imaginative and vivid their music is, and how the vibe they always try to curate is realized in every song. There's always added pressure on a track that an album's name is derived from, and this is a worthy track for La Gargola as an album title. Pete's kind of grating yet melodic high-pitched screams on How Long and Moonlight are very impressive, and my favorite part of the track is the bridge. 61 is Jim Jones or Cowards Part 2. I prefer this to Cowards Part 1. They do work as a two-parter for the album's thesis of the formation and function of cults quite well. End of Age Begins with a Little Bit of Dick is a crazy lyric, but perfectly captures the absurdity of how these cult leaders spin these narratives to serve their own selfish desires and simultaneously take advantage of others' vulnerabilities and fears. Cowards indeed. The outro of Brainwashing repeated over and over again with those dissonant chords is just a headbanger. 60 is Ghost and Razor. This was the track on Neuratius that initially left me feeling underwhelmed, but has continued to grow on me over time more and more. I felt that it sounded like it belonged on La Gargola or North Corridor at first, rather than the album it's actually on, which, it's kind of a specific sound, right? What really solidified this song for me, though, was hearing that final minute or so and really tuning into that. The Tool influence is clear as day in that outro, but it works really well here. The final riff with Pete's varied any minutes coming in brings back that atmosphere the rest of the album has and ties it into the overall record in a cohesive way. Number 59 is Karma Goddess. This song plays a bit similar to Ghost and Razor in my head for some reason, so it's kind of funny I put them back to back on the list. That was actually not intentional, but they sound a bit similar. I like the mid-chorus key changes, keeping things fresh on this track. It's a bit disorienting, but by design, I would think, based on the subject matter here. 58 is Self-Destructor. This has that signature single-string riff style Pete opted for on the album. The note on You Aren't At All Right might be one of Pete's highest belted notes ever. I mean, it's insanely impressive. His falsetto on This Time is so expertly controlled. I think that Self-Destructor may be the most impressive vocal showcase of Pete across their entire catalog. This song, again, is a scathing commentary on what were current events at the time of the pandemic. The It's Like War breakdown just has so much anger in it that many of us could relate to at the time of release, and probably still can. The ooze in the final chorus and Bite Your Tongue distant backing vocals kind of create Sci-Fi Crimes-esque atmosphere before it explodes into the final chorus. The piano that ends the song was a great decision and a surprising one, and gives a fitting end to an excellent lead single. 57 is Got Burned. This is a really fun track. Those guitar slides during the verses are satisfying to listen to every time. I like this kind of megaphone distortion vocal effect Pete has going during the verses. The narrator of the track seems to have feelings of betrayal from not keeping pace in outgrowing self-destructive and juvenile behaviors like their sober friends have, blaming others for getting burned when they're the ones doing it to themselves time and time again. 56 is Arise. This has a very solid first half, but it has an even better second half. The part of the track starting around 2 minutes in where it mellows out and then builds back up, the part on Better Not to Behave is my favorite vocal melody from Pete on this album, and I love the vocal layering for the last chorus. The outro of this track is really solid with its repetition of This One's Done, and lyrically this is a standout track. At 55, we have Same Old Trip. I like the individual components of this track, but I've always felt that they're not all completely cohesive with each other. It's a minor complaint. Because I like each section, it's not a huge deal. They just feel a little kind of abrupt in how they transition. For example, the chorus feels like it belongs to a different song than the verses. I really like the backup vocals that come in during the choruses and the ascending guitar chords under the vocals. The kind of tremolo guitar solo, while brief, serves as a nice instrumental bridge of sorts into the next sensor section. What I love about this song is its energy that never lets up. The piano that comes in for the final chorus always really hypes me up, and I'm always won over by the end. 54 is Midnight to Midnight. I actually used to skip this song when I was younger, but it's grown on me a ton over the years. It's odd in its vocal melodies, and I think that put me off a bit when I was younger, but I've come to appreciate how unique it makes the track. There's a lot of interesting mixing on the track as well, especially on the vocals, and again on the guitar right before the chorus. I do dock this song for having a very out-of-place bridge that doesn't make sense sonically and hurts the pacing a bit, but the rest is so good that it earns its place. 53 is Safer Waters. Safer Waters and Well Enough Alone play out similarly enough that I kind of wish they weren't back-to-back on the album. That being said, they're both excellent tracks. This is one of the more beautiful choruses of Chevelle, with some amazing vocal harmonies. The descending vocal line on Against the Surge of Waves is an earworm. I like the synths that come in during the final chorus. It really creates a sense of ambience that captures the kind of ocean vibe true to the song's name. And I just mentioned it, but 52 is Well Enough Alone. The opening scream on Sick is great, and pretty deceptive for how melodic of a song this actually turns out to be. I prefer Well Enough Alone to Safer Waters just because it feels slightly better paced to me, but they're both great tracks. I love the building and ascending pre-chorus in this song. It's kind of the perfect crescendo into what might be a top 5 Chevelle chorus. The Old and the Age section is mostly to thank for the pacing here, really shaking things up right when the track needs it the most. And Pete's falsetto on We Leave is such a great closing thought for the track. 51 is Forfeit. I love each section of this song pretty equally. The screams on Forfeit are some of Pete's best on this entire album. I love the lyrics in this song, especially the prehistoric dance and refrain from talking verse. And the guitar mixing is really great here, especially after So Step Up. Coming in at number 50, we have the title track of Point Number 1. The chorus on this track is just such an earworm, and it gets stuck in my head randomly all the time. In this case, the title track is my favorite on the album. Pete's scream on Yeah in the bridge is a standout, and the way it goes into the guitar solo is very memorable. 49 is Comfortable Liar. This keeps up the momentum from Family System. There's what sounds like an 808 hit on the first beat of the intro and the verse, which adds a thickness to the already heavy tone here. I love the drums on So Heal, and Pete's falsetto and vocal harmonies create an excellent atmosphere on this track. I like the change in rhythm over the 2-minute mark and the song title drop in the lyrics afterwards. The bass has such a great tone leading into the outro during its isolated part. 48 is Envy. Envy is such a unique song in their catalog. I love the intro guitar riff The song has a really great atmosphere. That's a word I'm going to throw around a ton in the top half of this list is atmosphere. The vocal lines, like Keep a Candle Burning, are airy and mysterious, and the chorus feels epic and almost cinematic in scale, mostly due to how the percussion is utilized throughout. 47 is Shocked at the End of the World. This is a great heavy track to close out the album on. Revolutionary words are too little too late in a time where action is needed more than ever. The song comments on our complicity in social and humanitarian issues, where people can get the satisfaction of feeling like they've done enough by voicing their thoughts on topics on social platforms, kind of creating the dopamine hit of accomplishment like we've done our part when in reality it's just an illusion of control. I acknowledge that may seem like what I'm doing in this moment right now and concede that that probably is the case, but I'm more so trying to interpret Pete's writing through this narrator. It does indeed feel too late now to change things. I don't know if anybody else feels that way, but I know Pete does based on the song. The ending of the track feels like the chaos of societal collapse and just everything falling apart before our eyes. The ending actually has these almost mechanical sounding guitar noises that, for those who know, is very reminiscent of one of my favorite closing tracks ever, which is Hysteria by Spirit Box, which hits a bit harder for me. Definitely go listen to that song if you like Shocked at the End of the World. 46 is Pistol Star, Gravity Heals. This song is all about its groove. The drum beat Sam lays down across the verses is infectious and kind of makes it a dancier tune for Chevelle standards. I like the instrumental breaks leading into each chorus, and the guitar layering does a lot for this song's atmosphere overall. 45 is Hallucinations. This is a welcome change of pace from how heavy the first three tracks of the album are. I think this album is so well paced, and the positioning of Hallucinations in the fourth slot is a huge part of that. The song is just atmospheric and moody. The way the percussion sounds so distant adds to the vibe as well. It almost sounds like Sam was recorded from the outside of the room his kit was in, almost as if the music itself is a hallucination. I have a more optimistic view of the message of this song. I like that the song is so up for interpretation, though, as to whether it has a positive or negative message. Hallucinations could refer to the fact that freedom is an illusion, the pessimistic take, or the fact that we are out of moves and arm in arm and doom is the illusion, and that we actually have choice and control. Or both are hallucinations, and it's more of a level take. Let me know what you think. 44 is Pale Horse. Those opening chords hit so hard. If It's Fate, It's Supposed to Hurt is a lyrical standout, just a banger line, and Pete's vocal delivery of it is equally solid. I'm glad they reworked the bridge on this song for those who heard kind of earlier versions from live shows. The production on this song is fantastic. 43 is Joyride, Omen. The Late Night and Joyride vocal fry from Pete is so impressive vocally here. I like that the guitar kind of bends in unison with those vocals, creating a false sense of melody that isn't really there in the screams. The bass is doing a lot of the heavy lifting on this track, which lets the guitar explore some of the higher register a bit during the second verse and those bends I mentioned earlier. What's the word? Atmosphere. 42 is Twinge. Excellent atmospheric and spacey closing track. Very unique sound overall. The main bass line here actually gets stuck in my head randomly a lot. Pete sounds so airy on Forever, and the vocal layers are very well done here. This is a slower song, but it's got kind of a strange structure to it that keeps things interesting, and it never actually feels slow. It's engaging throughout, which I love. 41 is Anti-Saint. Venacera was once my least favorite Chevelle album, but I kind of did a 180 on it and now count it among those I revisit the most. And Anti-Saint had a decent amount to do with that, though I think this album shines in its latter half the most. The radio distortion effect on Pete's vocals during the verses with the isolated bass behind him creates this kind of mysterious sound. The song does get a little repetitive, but then you've got my favorite part, which is easily the bridge with the ooze and the stakes are too low vocal line, and it gets rid of any concerns about repetition you may have. 40 is Under the Knife. There's some very heavy riffage juxtaposed by higher-pitched tremolo guitar. I love the use of that guitar style throughout La Gargola so much. The bass is laying down the main riff during these verses. The chorus is heavy. Again, Pete always nails this kind of melodic style of screaming where the guitar is mimicking him, and it kind of adds this illusion of pitch to Pete's screams where it almost makes it sound sung rather than screamed. 39 is Choking Game. Again, with that higher pitched kind of tremolo lead guitar that I love so much in this album, particularly in Jawbreaker earlier on. The bass holds down the fort on the main riff here. Sam's drumming keeps this track moving at breakneck pace. I mean, the song literally starts with Pete telling you to feel the rush, but you don't need those words because you would feel exactly that from how this song is constructed instrumentally. 38 is I Get It, another track that improved over time, in my estimation. I appreciate how it wastes no time at all getting to that first chorus. But man, I love the snappy drums in the verses and that acoustic guitar. There's actually, if you listen carefully, there's a very Muse-esque guitar bouncing between the right and left ear during the second verse, which for Chevelle is a pretty distinct sound. I discover new things every time I listen to this song. We are now getting into the A-tier songs, which I consider excellent, starting with 37, Last Days. I love this track. It conjures the album art so well and always makes me think of A24's The Witch, or the Vivitch, as some would say. Black Phillip from that movie was clear inspiration for the album art here. I love the horror movie vibe of The North Corridor, and this song is the centerpiece to make that all work. I know some people find the Glad I Caught That Witch repetitive, but those screamed vocals by Pete are just so good and such a formula shakeup to his more melodic hooks on their other albums. Having these scream-based hooks worked so well on this track and in Rivers, which we will get to later on. 36 is Prima Donna. I really believe that this should have been the closer to the album. Many of Chevelle's albums have successfully closed on sort of an acoustic track, a more mellow track. And as I mentioned earlier in the list, Clones is just a weaker closing track to me. This is a beautiful song. The layered ambient guitar effects behind the acoustic in front and center really adds that atmosphere, that magical word, atmosphere. Another acoustic closer, kind of like I just referenced Prima Donna should have been, is Bend the Bracket at 35. The dissonant guitar notes that are picked following the chords are some of my favorite sounds that Pete curates on this entire album. It's a dark track, and one that leaves such an interesting aftertaste to finish the album on. It's a departure from the sound of all the previous tracks, and makes it stand out in a way where it feels like this is an important statement. Though sonically, it feels like a helpless statement at that. I find this song to be the musical equivalent of walking through a wasteland, but believe it or not, that is complimentary. 34 is Send the Pain Below. There's a good reason that this song really blew up. While it may have become a bit overplayed, it has not lost any of its appeal to me, contrary to The Red, which I talked about way up on the list. The main guitar riff, Pete's lyricism, and the much like suffocating hook all create what is truly lightning in a bottle. I know many people would rank this as an S-tier song, and I do really love it. The fact that I have many more songs above it is just a testament to how consistent Chevelle has been as a band, and that they've just constantly improved. 33 is Glimpse of the Con. Easily my favorite B-side from Chevelle. This was on repeat for me when I first ran 12 Bloody Spies back to front, and I love the lyrics, particularly the title drop. It's just a glimpse of the con from beyond. Despite being one of their longer tracks, the pacing is excellent. Pete's vocal switches between chest voice and falsetto are so well done. I love the vibe this song creates. It feels like it's living and breathing, and the outro atmosphere and layering is reminiscent of One Ocean, which is a favorite track of mine you'll see later. 32 is Revenge. Another great example of vocal layering alongside Arise. Revenge is one of the better tracks on Hats Off to the Bull, in my opinion, partly due to how well the vocal layering is done on the So Long section. Fate has tortured us for too long, into the final chorus is just like a peak moment. I can never pick which vocal line to sing along to because they're all so good. But to this song's credit, it never feels overwhelming or that the layers are competing. They're all just so complementary to each other. 31 is Pinata. This is just a relentless and energetic song. The secondary guitar playing a monotone tremolo over the intro riff gives it a sense of speed unmatched elsewhere on the album. The I'll Ask My Curious side sections give a bit of respite from that energy, but it picks back up again. The juxtaposition of these sections plays out so masterfully, and in the hands of a lesser band would seem a bit abrupt, but here the transitions between those sections are just so smooth. This might also be the best Chevelle guitar solo, though there aren't many of them. This one has always stood out to me in particular. 30 is To Return. Criminally underrated track, and one that has always been a standout to me. The song's minimalistic at times in a way that keeps it fresh and dynamic. For example, during the first Poor Boy section, the band mostly drops out except for Pete's vocals and guitar. The additional layers the next time this section plays, again, keep it fresh, and the vocal harmonies come in and give it even more sound. The Keep On Burning Through the Noose build serves as a great bridge into the final chorus. 29 is One Lonely Visitor. This is one of the saddest songs in Chevelle's discography, one of two to make me cry. And what can I say? This song is such a surprising way to close out the same album that starts with Family System, and it's such a juxtaposition to An Evening with El Diablo. I know this song is a bit divisive in the community, but I've always had a soft spot for it, and I love this pattern I mentioned of Chevelle closing out albums with these mellow acoustic tracks. This feels like one of the most emotionally raw vocal performances from Pete, and some of his most vulnerable lyrics in their entire catalog. Finishing the album on the question, "Am I alone in here?" always just leaves me sitting in silence for minutes after it ends. Pete's voice kind of cracks and wavers on some of the notes up the octave at the end, but that just makes it more fitting with the raw emotion of this song. 28 is Saturdays. This might be a hot take, but I think this is one of the best tracks on Venecera by a large margin. That guitar riff is just so infectious and memorable. I mean, honestly, that's it. It's that guitar riff. I just love it so much. The drums also stand out here with a very tom-heavy intro, and then the kick drum pattern on the verses has always been really satisfying to me. The chorus is strong, but again, I just love that guitar work in between. The Something New bridge is short and sweet, and it's a very unique closing track. 27 is The Clincher. The Clincher was one of my first Chevelle songs, so I do have some really deep nostalgia for this track. The bass-driven verses are memorable and heavy. The fake-out of the first chorus makes it feel so much more earned when it finally hits around 145. The vocal harmonies that enter the picture here are very well written, and Now Saturate makes for such a heavy breakdown. This song serves as a great bridge between Wonder What's Next and this type of thinking, kind of bringing their sounds together and having elements of both what came before and what is to come. I love the backup vocal lines around 250, and the song goes out with an absolute bang, once again leaning into Pete's screams on Now Saturate. This is one of their most well-balanced songs between melody and heaviness. Number 26 is Shameful Metaphors. This gives a bit of breathing room after the explosive back-to-back tracks opening Sci-Fi Crimes. Shameful Metaphors is Chevelle at a bit gentler of a sound, but without sacrificing the overdrive on the guitars. Pete's vocal harmonies on the chorus are great, and the Revolting Man vocal run always gets stuck in my head. 25 is The Meddler. The bass steals the show here, but I really love the guitar chords over it with the tremolo pedal turned on. This song has one of the stronger choruses on Hats Off to the Bull in my opinion, and remains one of the standout tracks on the album. I love that their B-sides album ended up being titled in reference to the lyrics of this song, which are pretty strong. The Never Never bridge is the standout section, and I love the build of this into the final chorus. There's a lot of layers going on, which gives this a dynamic sound, and the way Pete hits the falsetto on We Want to Watch is beautiful. 24 is AI Phobias. This is the most fun track on Bright as Blasphemy. The drums are punchy and drive the verses with the cymbal work. This track just feels really full, and Pete's vocals here are great. The gang vocals on AI Phobias and the hummed vocals during the latter chorus all add to that fullness. I personally feel immense fear about AI and was glad that they tackled that subject matter on this album. The reminder that we are ancient animals is such a sobering and banger lyric. Advancement is just such a gray area, right? Like, without it, we wouldn't have this music or the means to listen to it, but at the same time, it might be our doom. No big deal. It's a tough idea to grapple and maybe the single most topical concern for most people in the developed world today. 23 is Wolves, Love and Light. This is the standout on Bright as Blasphemy for me. Absolute banger of a track. The guitar chugging along during the verses with the bass keeping pace underneath it. Pete's belted delivery of Slivers Remain, immediately following his falsetto of Lethal Minds, is just so impressive and should not be overlooked. I like the subversive commentary this track takes, where kind of the manipulation and evil of cults is a bit more straightforward in songs like Rabbit Hole and Jim Jones. Here, you have the deception of love and light as a means to pull others into an ideology, quote-unquote, for good, appealing to that desire to do the right thing. The gang vocals on Trust reinforce kind of how many sheep are belonging to these groups and reinforcing their ideals, though the delivery of those vocal lines sounds more like that of the titular Wolves, aggressive and with blood on the chin. 22 is Remember When. This song perfectly musically captures the feeling of drifting off in space, your memories flashing through your mind. It's such a bittersweet song and sonically gives off the sense of nostalgia that the title implies. It sounds familiar, yet also very new and innovative for Chevelle's sound. More of that single string riffage that's signature of Naratius. I think that style lends itself to the sci-fi vibe really well. I like the doubling of the guitar chords over Pete's vocal melodies on parts of the chorus, which just doubles down on that beautiful melody, which is ultimately the heart and soul of this song. The falsetto notes on Nowhere are a highlight. Number 21 is Roswell's Spell. This immediately picks the pace back up after the nice breathing room that Highland's apparition creates. Roswell kicks the door open with one of the heaviest sounds on the album, though it goes into a more melodic section on Look at the Eyes. It teases the listener with the chorus, but opts to go directly into the second verse, which, I've mentioned this before and I'll mention it again, makes that chorus feel so earned once Burning Out finally hits. This track is perfectly paced. Number 20 is Jars. It's a very incredible and memorable track. The stabbing you through me and him through you is such a great part, though I always mix up who stabs who and in what order when I'm singing along. I know it's not that hard, but give me a break. Pete's vocal fry on World is incredibly utilized. 19, An Island. Okay, a little story time. I saw this track live at the Aragon Ballroom in Chicago in general admission, and the crowd was understandably violent as hell. A hulking dude who looked like Leonidas from 300 kind of caught me on accident as he was bodying dozens of people in the mosh pit, and it hurt really bad. I was in pain for a week. I thought I broke something. But it was glorious. There is no better soundtrack in this world to get the shit kicked out of you to than An Island. If I should elaborate on the actual track a bit, yeah, that riff is the backbone of it and carries the whole thing. 18 is Punchline. What a surprising song on the album it's on. To this day, Nothing else they've released sounds even remotely similar to Punchline, and that is part of why I love it so much. I love when they experiment like this and it pays off. The bass synth is like a sonic black hole in the track, sucking away any space that could be left in the mix. That's complimentary though. I mean that as a good thing. The acoustic guitar that comes in is such a juxtaposition to that deep growl of the bass synth, and Pete's vocal line and lyrics on I'm Not Your Punchline, Paid Here to Stay are extremely memorable. The drums that come in on the They've Gone section are so unique, and the kick drum beat under the song just feels like an alien heartbeat almost. I love Punchline. 17 is Endlessly. This track is gorgeous. It feels so bittersweet. I've said it before, I'll say it again, atmosphere is what really makes this track. I remember when the acoustic version was released and it didn't quite work for me, but once I heard the album version, for the first time, it was a night and day difference. The guitar tone Pete went with here really adds to that spacey sound the album seeks to capture. And the percussion is doing so much of the heavy lifting here to give the track its cinematic feel. I'm always a sucker for layered vocals, and this track does it very well in the outro. 16, So Long, Mother Earth. This is an incredible track that captures the sound of Naratia's so well. Pete opted for more single-string guitar work on this album as opposed to kind of power chords, and this track is a really good showcase of that, an introduction to that sound, with that kind of hammer-on patterns in the chorus. These are also some of Pete's higher notes he's hit vocally. I remember spinning this album for the first time, and when that first So Long hits, I knew I was in for something special. Okay, we are in the top 15 tracks now where my S tier officially begins. These are the best of the best from Chevelle, in my opinion. I have some hot takes here. I have some interesting choices. And so this is where I'd really encourage discussion, if it's civil, and leave me some of your favorites in the comments below. I want to see where our tastes overlap and where they differ. And just want to say, I think everybody's got such a different list, and that's just a testament to how incredible of a band Chevelle is. They've evolved so much over the years, and they, to this day, are just one of the most consistently high-quality output bands. And so I don't think there's anything, there's such thing as a right or wrong list or top 15. But without further ado, Highland's Apparition. This is their best acoustic song, in my opinion. It is such a departure from the sound that the rest of Sci-Fi Crimes goes for, but it comes at exactly the right time to keep things fresh. I love the chorus of this song and the lyrics. Search for the soulless ends, and I'll point them towards rest is the standout of those. The guitar part after the ooh is so nice. It calls back to Bend the Bracket in a way that's satisfying. The dissonant use of open notes is something I'm a big sucker for. Pete's vocal fry on Living Proof is perfect. Complete opposite vibe for number 14 is Rivers. According to Apple Music, this is my fourth most listened to song of all time. Not Chevelle, any band. I love the flamenco sounding guitar during the verses and how the sideways sections come in and just burn it all down. This track is so dynamic and interesting. The screams on Sideways are so impressive, and the bass tone just has this thickness. It comes through so strongly in the mix. I love the guitar solo and kind of the calm before the storm on Well, It Seems As Though You Want to Live Forever. 13 is Jawbreaker. I love the tremolo guitar driving sections of the track while Pete repeats Jawbreaker on the vocals. The bass during the verses is heavy, and then the guitar during I Caught Your Evil Eye is some of the best on the album. I love the way that section gets recontextualized later in the song, initially over heavy guitar chords, but then the tremolo gets reintroduced and gives it a slightly more melodic and varied, and dare I say jazzy sound, despite the vocals remaining the same. 12 is Young Wicked. Rivers to Young Wicked is one of the best three-song runs in their catalog. This song is just the cream of the crop for heavy Chevelle. It's perfectly paced, it's chaotic, it's angry. I actually am usually a hater of using kind of children vocals in tracks, but the way it's used here is just unsettling given the subject matter of the album. Those Yes Sir and Young Wicked screams from Pete, they just have so much force behind them, and the instrumentation was made for starting a circle pit. Speaking of circle pits, number 11 is Mars Simula. So, I'm not using this as a ranking criteria, but I feel the need to mention that this song goes insane live. I was lucky enough to catch this on the last tour that I caught of Chevelle. I want to say 2023 is the last time I saw them. They played this as one of the last two tracks. It was amazing. That said, the main riff that drives the song is a headbanger. It feels like a sequel to An Island in a lot of ways. It scratches the same itch for sure. I love the distorted guitar effects after Hypnotic Travelers and the subsequent lyrics in verse 2. The build towards the 2:16 instrumental breakdown is one of my favorite moments on the entire album. I love the second guitar that comes in over the top of that. It just serves as a nice, more melodic break in an otherwise heavier jam track. The way the song just keeps driving forward gives the feeling of being on a rocket or spaceship and just kicking it into full gear. It's the musical equivalent of G-Force, and it is astounding how they managed to capture this vibe so well. We are at the top 10 now, starting off with Panic Prone. This song is all about its build-up. It's a melancholic track with the lyrics and instrumentation, and when it leads into Enter the Foreign, it is so explosive and cathartic in a way that no other songs in their catalog manage to achieve. The way it crescendos into the final chorus is perfect. I can't seem to end these images. Hauntingly looks like hell is a standout line lyrically to me. The harmonies on To Care or Plead Silence are some of my favorite vocal layers in their catalog. Number 9, and this, I obviously had to make sure nostalgia didn't completely blind my ranking, is the song that started it all for me, the song that got me into Chevelle. This is Tug of War. So, I first heard this song playing a PS2 game, ATV Off-Road Fury 3, I think, an ATV racing game. And they had this song in the soundtrack of that game. At the time, I didn't have an iPod, so I would just always repeat Tug of War in the game over and over again as my hype song while I was driving around in an ATV. Lost Inspiration remains one of their best choruses to date. This song blends the melodic and the heavy masterfully, which is something that was accomplished so well in general on this type of thinking. 8 is Ouija Board. Absolutely mind-blowing album opener. The guitar tone is just incredible on the main riff. Doubling the bass and the guitar creates a fullness here that's just incredible. Pete sounds amazing on We're Growing a Fire. The song just doesn't leave room to breathe in a good way. There's these tremolo pull-offs during the verses that are chaotic and send the message clear as day that this album is going to be a heavy one. There's no rising action or climax or falling action on Ouija Board. The whole fucking thing is the climax, and it's incredible. 7 is Letter from a Thief. Pete really saved so many of his all-time best choruses for sci-fi crimes, and Letter from a Thief is an electric song that wastes no time getting to that earworm of a hook. Again, Pete's vocal fry on the belted notes of Stay There, You'll Live sounds so good. I'm such a sucker for this. It's his best vocal album, not even close. I love the guitar during the bridge and the whispered vocals on Sunsets going into a brief guitar solo. Imagine Here's a Better Feel, Told to Dissolve, or Choose to Fade, or Stay There is such a great run lyrically and vocally, and I love what the guitar is doing behind it. 6 is Paint the Seconds. This needs to be in the conversation for top Chevelle songs, without a doubt, but I never hear it there. The chorus alone is one of the strongest in their catalog, maybe top 3, if I had to say, honestly. I think the lyrics have some interesting interpretations here as well. To me, it sounds like a commentary on assimilation and or conformity, and this song has a rare, brief, but well-utilized guitar solo by Pete. We are now in the top 5. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for tuning along. If you skipped up here, thanks as well. I'm just glad you clicked. But number 5 is Family System. This has always been one of my favorite tracks, and it's in contention for the heaviest things they've ever written, but without sacrificing excellent melodies as well. The opening riff is a headbanger. Pete sounds excellent belting out the first lyrics, "I'm tired of your open mouth," and the "saying it's too late" is kind of that earworm that the song needs. I love the dissonant lead guitar that comes in around 140. Sam's drumming is on point in this track as well. The way it fades back into the intro section again for the bridge, leading into just an explosive outro, is impeccable. The energy of the song is impeccable, and it sets the stage for the tracks to follow so well. Everything an opener should be, and more. Number 4 is One Ocean. I would guess that this is a love it or hate it track due to how distinctive a sound it has, but it's definitely in the love category for me. One Ocean is the definition of atmospheric. There's some subtle electric piano synth work going on in the background with some kind of extreme delay guitar in the right ear, and you've got the main guitar notes on the left. The chorus here is so melancholy and beautiful. It captures the awe of just standing out where the sand and the waves meet, watching the sunset, and just feeling this overwhelming sadness, remembering kind of how small we are and how we're squandering that beauty through environmental destruction. It's one of the only 2 Chevelle songs to make me cry. There is so much room for interpretation in this track as well. To me, it's about this vastness that we can't comprehend, that gives life to things and simultaneously takes life from things and brings peace. And I could go on, but we have to get to the top 3. So yeah, One Ocean, very special song. Number 3 is Sleep Apnea, an incredible opener to my favorite Chevelle album. I love the guitar riff, the kick drum keeping the pulse throughout the verses while the instrumentation builds up to one of the best choruses Chevelle has ever written. Pete's vocals are just on fire for this whole album, as I mentioned. He's got that slight vocal fry on so many of his belted notes, and it just makes for this amazing sound. The bridge section is solid here. Pete's falsetto on Sleepless Stroll is great, and the following section of Shifting Hours mistakenly used up before exploding into the final chorus keeps things fresh. I love this track. There's just one more on Sci-Fi Crimes I like more than it. And that is my number 2 track, which is Mexican Sun, following up one S-tier song immediately with another. I think Sci-Fi Crimes is just a perfect album. Honestly, Mexican Sun is so energetic and well-paced. The bass is great on this track, and I love the dissonant guitar under Pete's fried "Watch the Tail, Boy." The chorus here is another standout in their discography. "Hey, way to go, lad" is the best Pete's voice has ever sounded. To make it better, this song has a great bridge. The backing vocals add some solid layering. I like the reintroduction of the intro riff again coming out of this section, and the final chorus is just immense. And finally, I did have to think about this quite a bit, but I think the answer was always with me. My favorite Chevelle track of all time. I say that, but who knows? There's so many good ones, this could change, but solidly, I think it's been for a few years now, An Evening with El Diablo. That bass line. Do I need to say anything more? This song just builds and builds. It makes you wait so patiently for the best part, and that just makes it hit so much harder when it finally comes in. The Too Scared to Run section is strong enough to make the track memorable in itself, but when Wish I Had Your Faults comes in, it's one of Pete's most soaring vocal runs in their discography. The grit coming through his voice on those high notes is impeccable, and the lyrics of this song only add to its atmosphere. When I see the album art of Wonder What's Next, this is the song that comes to mind for me instantly. It just feels like a journey. It feels like it's just so grand and climactic and epic in its scale. I love An Evening with El Diablo. It's my favorite Chevelle track. Let me know what you think of that take in the comments below. And thank you so much for listening to this ranking